Hello and welcome to my second ever YouTube video. Actually, that's not technically true, but this is my second ever diorama video and I'm going to be showing you how I made this bit of tabletop terrain. Now, I just started with a bit of foam core, so just cutting it into little bits. This was so much harder than it looks. I don't have a hot wire foam cutter. It's just not something I have the budget for at the moment. I will definitely get one at some point because it makes cutting foam so much easier. But I had to whack out the handheld saw, as you could see there, just so I could cut the foam. Anyway, after this I was scoring in the tiles and I actually broke a couple of pencils doing this. That wasn't the only culprit. But I am basically making the tiles for the floor of these kind of ruins, outdoorsy ruins, as you can see there. Just measured out the width and length and whatnot of the tiles and then rubbing it with tinfoil to give some texture and then going in with my X-Acto knife and just going absolutely ham is the only way I can describe this. Just stabbing it, making little cuts here and there. You'll see later on when we paint it, you can really see those details come out, and you know, I think this like weathering step is the most vital step really of getting that old-timey ruiny look. So yeah, obviously it looks a bit random, and that is because it is completely random. I am just picking out whatever bits, going back in with the tinfoil, as you can see there, and making a few more impressions. Yeah, you can see it looks pretty tiley, if I do say so myself. So like I said earlier, I don't really have the budget at the moment to be making these crazy, huge scale pieces like you see, you know, Jazza do or Nerdforge do. They're two of my favourite content creators on YouTube. So I just buy all of my stuff either from eBay or from Hobbycraft, which is our craft store here in the UK. And it's all quite cheap, and other stuff that I use is just stuff that I have lying around the house. For example, tinfoil. Now, tinfoil isn't normally such a huge fundamental part of my projects as it was in this one, but I used a lot of tinfoil for this. As you can see, I was just wrapping up the cut-offs of foam with tinfoil, and then here I'm just gluing it into place with hot glue. There I am going in with the handheld saw again. This actually worked out pretty good because it gave me some pretty uneven foam pieces, which meant that I could cover them in tinfoil and they came out pretty uneven and natural looking, which is exactly what you want really when you're working with rocks, because something that I find can happen sometimes when you're trying to make rocks is that they look too organic. So there I am making all sorts of rocks, and you'll see me in a moment just using a hot glue gun to glue them onto the foam board. So as you can see, after a while, it really starts to come together. I'm trying to be really random and, you know, haphazard, if you will, with this rock placement that I'm doing. Just because you want it to look really natural, like I say. Rocks don't grow symmetrically. Well, rocks don't grow anyway, but you know what I mean. They're never in an area symmetrically. They're never completely smooth. There's always some, like, warpage, if that's even a word, to them. And I realised as far I never said why I'm making this. So my friend James has commissioned me to make this piece for Dungeons and Dragons, and so I thought I would just start filming all of the pieces that I make and put them on YouTube, so that if anyone, you know, wants a tutorial for how you can make this stuff on a budget, because that is currently what I am on, then you can, and it is completely possible. And my mantra is there is nothing that you can't make with cardboard and a glue gun. So realistically, that is all you need. You could make this with cardboard, a glue gun, and paint, and toilet paper, which, as you'll see, comes into play later on. So now, as you can see, I'm just covering the whole thing in masking tape. This is so, you know, the paint will actually adhere to the tinfoil, because tinfoil does not like being painted, and it will crack and go all messy and gross. I do also later on add a layer of plaster, and that's kind of to smooth it out a little bit more and, you know, get rid of the edges of the tape that are still visible. But yeah, so I just cover the whole thing basically in masking tape. Again, this is something you probably have lying around. Oh, look at that cheeky little transition. I knew you guys didn't want to watch the whole of that, so I just did a little transition. But obviously, as you can see, I am now mixing up some plaster of Paris. Again, you don't need to do this step. You can just go and paint straight onto the top of the masking tape, but I like to do this and complicate it a little bit further. But again, plaster of Paris is super, super cheap. I think I got like a 5 kilogram bag from Hobbycraft for like a £5. So again, if you're on a budget, there are really cheap ways that you can do this. So yeah, just messily painting this on. Again, not really worrying if it's too thick or too thin in certain places, because at the end of the day, this will again give us a really nice texture. On top of the plaster of Paris, when that's dry, I also added a layer of clear glue and sand, which again gives it that nice kind of terrain texture. So it looks like there's some sand on there, or there's some weathering, or because obviously we're working in, I think it's 2.8 millimeters scale. I think that's what Warhammer is, and Dungeons and Dragons. Sorry, I just yawned then. That was so rude. Oh my god, I'm so sorry, everyone. So yeah, we're working in that scale. So obviously a lot of things are going to be very, very tiny. And so yeah, I just want to make a little bit of extra effort to add in those details, because I think the details is really, really what makes a massive difference. This sand is literally sand that I got from my back garden and just dried in the oven. So again, a nice free material. PVA glue, I got like a whole huge thing of PVA glue. I don't even want it, like 5 kilograms of PVA glue in wicks for a tenner. I'd say always buy PVA glue from the hardware stores. I don't know why, but it's a lot cheaper and they sell it in larger quantities. I'm not actually sure what the hardware girlies are using PVA glue for, but listen, it helps me out. And that PVA glue has been serving me for years. I'm not even halfway through yet, and I use it every single day, and it's just gone a super, super long way. So yeah, PVA glue is where you want to be. I also use, you know, Mod Podge and stuff, but PVA glue is completely fine if you don't have access to that. Now, I got these XPS foam slabs from eBay, and then I realised I needed a foam wire hot cutter thing in order to cut them into bricks, and I don't have one of those, and I didn't want to buy one, so I ended up actually buying these bricks from a seller on Etsy. I got 1,200 bricks for £15, I think, and I didn't even use a quarter of them in this project, but I just put them in a little Tupperware, shake them up with some rocks in there to get some authentic rock texture, and then going in and just cutting up some smaller ones, just so we've got a bit of a variety. But yeah, as you can see here, putting them in a Tupperware with some rocks. I've actually put them in there with crystals, which that is such a girly thing to do, but I just didn't have any rocks lying around, so I put them in with crystals. Anyway, after I've weathered them, they come out looking really, really nice and like crunched up and weathered, basically. So after that, I just pour out again some PVA glue onto the side and start sculpting the ruins, basically. I just do this on a flat down surface because I was going to use not PVA glue, I was going to use hot glue, but first of all, hot glue melts XPS foam and can release some gross fumes, and we don't want that. And second of all, it also leaves these like stringy bits, and I didn't want any stringy bits, so I decided to build the majority of my ruins face down, and then once they were dry, stand them up and kind of go from there. And it ended up working really, really, really well. So I didn't need to do any kind of balancing architecture in the end, which I was really grateful for. So yeah, this is me literally just dipping the bricks in PVA glue and making loads of lines, as you can see there, just building them up. I made a nice little archway, which I think looks really cool. And yeah, this bit was really fun actually, and surprisingly therapeutic. I really enjoyed this bit. And so once my base was dry and my ruins were dry, as you can see, they held up really well there. I just hot glued them onto the base and then built them up with the extra little bits that I had. And and added a little wall for a pathway, and I just think it ended up looking really, really cool. This is what I like about these little bricks, is that you can kind of make them into whatever pattern you want, which I just think is really nice, because you can literally do whatever you want. You can create any kind of building that you want, and I added this little pathway, as you can see, and in a future project I'm actually making a wizard's tower, and I'm going to coat a Pringles tube in these little foam bricks, and I think it is going to look absolutely wicked, so I'm looking forward to that. Stay tuned if you want to see that in a future video, because I will probably upload it onto YouTube. How exciting. So yeah, there's a lot of this really, just gluing, sticking, seeing what looks good, and then kind of going from there. Just adding in a few fallen bricks here and there to really, you know, accentuate the kind of ruins feel of it. Like there's some gaps in the bricks where bricks may have fallen out, where weathering's happened, and I think it looks really cool. So onto the tree. Now this was totally a trial and error thing that I did. I basically had the middle of a tinfoil tube, that's what that, like the trunk of the tree is, and then a bit of wire that I just had laying around. I actually realised you don't need to use the wire for this. You can just make little crinkled up tubes of tinfoil, and it works exactly the same. So I did kind of do an unnecessary step here, but it still worked, so I'm happy with that. So the tinfoil tube I just cut to size, and then cut some little bits and bobs off it that I could then stick back on later on to give you know, some knobbly bits to the tree texture, which I think was quite cool. The little tinfoil wire things are going to eventually be the roots, and I've never made a tree before. This was absolutely my first time doing anything like this, and I think it turned out amazing. I'm really, really happy with how it turned out, and I'll definitely be using this technique again. So as you can see here, I'm just gluing on some of the knobbly bits, as I like to say, and I've cut the tree to have a little bit of like a slant to it, because I want it to be kind of like a dead tree. You know, the top half's fallen off, and you know, the years it's been there. It's a super old knobbly tree, and it's kind of engulfing the ruins in it, and maybe it's part of the reason that, you know, part of the ruins have fallen down. So then I just glue that in place. Again with some hot glue, my all-time favourite craft supply. And I just did a bit of hot glue on the side of the tube as well, to stick it to the back of the bricks. And then with that, I just took all of the little tinfoil wire roots that I'd made and pretty much placed them wherever my heart desired, essentially. This was totally random. There was no rhyme or reason. I mean, this is kind of a theme with my projects, is that a lot of the stuff I do is completely random and doesn't have any reason really as to why I'm doing it. I'm just kind of following what my heart wants to do, as cheesy as that sounds. But most of the time it seriously works out, because I never want to plan, if I'm making nature terrain, I never want to plan it too much, because then, like I say, you fall into the trap of it being too perfect or too symmetrical, and that's just not what you want. So because I wanted this tree to really be like an integral part of the ruins, I decided to put some of the roots and branches kind of going through the ruins and wrapping around on the other side to give this kind of really dilapidated look to the ruins. Like, it's been there for so long that this tree has just become, you know, a part of the bricks, and it's really bringing back the nature is really taking back the ruins and engulfing it, if you will. I don't know if I've explained that correctly, but I'm sure you know what I mean. So when I was happy with what I'd done with the roots, I just added a bit more tin foil on the trunk itself and along the roots, just so I could have a little bit more texture underneath what will eventually be Toilet paper. Yes, you heard me right. Toilet paper is going on this tree, and that is what absolutely changes the game and makes it look just so realistic and so detailed. I just can't believe that something as easily accessible as toilet paper is really what brought this piece together, but it did. So as you can see, I'm just spreading glue on the trunk now, and I'm literally taking little bits of toilet paper and sticking it onto the tree trunk. That is quite literally what I'm doing. So yeah, this was quite a fiddly job, and my hands did end up getting super gluey, but that's all part of the fun, isn't it? And anyone who crafts knows that making a mess is basically the best part of the whole thing. I even covered the roots in toilet paper as well, which was quite fiddly, but this was a really fun part of the process, and actually probably I'd say one of my favourite parts. So yeah, ended up doing the entire thing, covering the whole tree in this gluey toilet papery thing, and it did end up taking days to dry. I mean, you can imagine saturated toilet paper. Yeah, it's not going to dry quickly, but I slathered this in PVA glue, so yeah, it did take quite a long time to dry. But while it was drying, I did just mess with it a little bit more, adding some gnarly knobbly bits, as I like to say in this video, onto the surface of the bark to give it a bit more of a barky texture, so that when I painted it there would be rivets and high points, peaks and troughs, so that when I dry brush it, it brings out those highlights and stuff. I was also doing this toilet paper thing on all of the roots there. It's just, it did take me quite a long time, but it was super fun. Then I went outside and spray painted the whole thing black. I didn't film that because I was outside and it was just a bit of a messy job. But if you don't have any spray paint, you can just paint it with acrylic paint. It's basically just to give that kind of base colour, so that there's no blue or white sticking out in the final project. But yeah, after that I just basically went on and I kind of dry brushed, but this first layer was more of like a wet dry brush of grey, and I did it all over the bricks, the rocks and the tiles, and then I went over with a lighter grey and dry brushed that on, and then a white and dry brushed that on, and it just brought out loads of the highlights of the rocks, which I thought ended up looking really cool. Dry brushing is one of my absolute favourite techniques of all time, because I just think it brings such a natural look, and it keeps some of that black that we had on there already in the cracks and crevices, which gives such an amazing shadow look. And then this was my first layer of a watered down brown acrylic paint on the tree, and then I just basically went in with loads of different variations of brown and dry brushed, half wet dry brushed on, just to keep some of those shadows in there as well. Yeah, here I am going back and dry brushing the rocks. It was at this point that I realised that the rocks, the bricks and the tiles all looked like the same colour. So I decided to add some more colour to the tiles in order to make a little bit of a contrast. I started off by adding like a sepia brown wash to the entire tiles, but then I thought I could go a little bit darker, so I added a black wash. I mean, you can see it here, it just makes such a difference. Before, the tiles, bricks, rocks all kind of looked one and the same, but this time I think it kind of breaks it up a little bit and makes those rocks and the bricks really pop. Next, I just added some of these little grass tufts. Honestly, my favourite part of any project is always the flocking and, you know, adding the moss, the greenery, the grass. In my personal opinion, I don't love these grass tufts. I think they do look good, but I think on their own they're a bit bland and boring and blah. So I also like to add my own kind of flocking. So what I do is just put glue where I think I'd like, you know, the flocking to go, and then I just sprinkle it on top. And then if it lands there, it lands there. If it lands somewhere else and ends up sticking, that is also great. I really like the kind of natural look that this gives, and it really makes it look like, you know, things have fallen naturally rather than being placed in a specific place. So yeah, basically now just adding the final touches, just some more clump foliage in different places. I really just think that foliage brings it all together at the end, so I'm really happy with how this turned out. Just adding a bit more moss in between the cracks, and I think it makes it look really natural. I love a natural look. Right, so we are almost done. Wow, this has been one monster of a video, and if you are still here, honestly, thank you so much. I'm just starting on my YouTube journey, but hopefully I'll be able to post a few more videos, and yeah, let me know what you want to see next, because I really enjoyed making this video, and it's really cool to be able to show my process that I'm really proud of to anyone who wants to watch it. So yeah, we'll call it good, and let's roll to the reveal. Bye!